On Saturday night, the UFC is back in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil for UFC 301. It feels like yesterday that UFC 300 took place. It was just a couple weeks ago, but they're moving on to Brazil. It's headlined by Alexandre Pantoja, the undisputed UFC Flyweight Champion of the world, is defending it against an unlikely challenger in number 10 ranked Steve Ercek. That's the headliner. The co-main event is the returning Jose Aldo, the former UFC champion of the world, taking on Jonathan Martinez, UFC top 15 bantamweight prospect. There's a couple other good fights on the card that we'll get into later. But starting it off, I wanted to start with the third fight from the top. Anthony Smith, Lionheart, is taking on Vitor Petrino. Petrino just fought a couple months ago, not so long ago. It was an all right performance. I was expecting a little bit more, if I'm being completely honest. The guy is a really talented Brazilian, a really talented prospect, only 26 years old, fresh, ready to go. And in the UFC, although his last performance wasn't great, I've seen enough to be impressed with him. So far, he's 4-0 in the UFC, beat Tyson Pedro in his last fight, who's a really good veteran at this point. So I really think that he does have a good future, but this is jumping right into the deep end because as we know, Anthony Smith hasn't gotten over the hump of being a UFC champion at this point. He still is a very good veteran in this sport. 35 years old, been in championship fights, been in big fights. It seems like they always feed him these great young prospects. That is Anthony Smith. They do. But Anthony Smith is the underdog in this fight at plus 400, minus 600 for Petrino. I think Anthony Smith is a really live underdog in this one. I think he has a real shot to win this. I'm being serious. I think that he's kind of being overlooked because of who he's fought. Anthony Smith has had a really tough go of things as of late. He's lost 3 or 4, but let's look at who he fought. He fought Khalil Roundtree, who's one of the most talented strikers in this division. Just a devastating guy to go against. Then he had a great win against Ryan Spann, and then he lost to Ankalaev and Walker, two other killers in this light heavyweight division. So nothing to be ashamed about. He's lost the top 5 guys. That's it, pretty much. Besides, Khalil Roundtree is ranked 8th now, a little outside that top 5, but still a unique challenger for the light heavyweight division. But I still believe in Anthony Smith. I think he's going to have a good showing. I'm going to say Petrino beats him by decision. I don't think he submits him, but I do think there's an outside chance, and it's really good money if you want to bet on an underdog to bet on Smith, because like I said, he has a lot of experience, been in a lot of pay-per-views, a lot of big fights, and I wouldn't be shocked if he wins, but I'm going to go with the younger guy in Petrino because I think he has more at stake to progress his career and move up those rankings and get in those rankings in the UFC. But moving on, Jose Aldo, the king of Rio, is returning. We don't have a guy in this card. We don't have an Alex Pereira. We don't have a Charles Oliveira, the current champions, or in Oliveira's case, former champion, dominant Brazilians on this card. But we do have Jose Aldo. We do have Alex Pantoja, who's in the main event, as we know, is the flyweight champion. But Aldo returns. He's been gone for about a year and a half at this point. Lost his last fight. Disappointing performance against Marab. He returns against Jonathan Martinez, who is no slouch in his own right. This guy is 30 years old, but he's been on quite a run in the UFC. He's won 6 straight fights. He beat Adrian Yanez, beat Said Nurmagomedov, beat Cub Swanson, knocked him out actually. He's on quite a win streak. A win over Jose Aldo for Martinez would really put him in the right place in this division, this stacked bantamweight division. To me, the best division in the sport probably right now. But Jose Aldo, although he's on the last fight in his UFC contract, he said he wants to box in the near future. He's 37 years old, but it sounds like he wants to keep it going, and he's going to decide his UFC future and his MMA future after this fight. But I think that Jose Aldo is going to win this fight. He's plus 120. He's a slight underdog to Martinez at minus 140. But this guy has all the experience in the world. I actually have liked the way he's looked his last couple of times down the octagon. Won a couple fights, then lost the last one, like I said, against Marab, who's just a dominant competitor in his own right. But Aldo, to me, is just going to be too much for Martinez. He's too experienced. He's so well versed, and his conditioning has looked really good leading up to this fight. I think he looks like he's in really good shape for this one. So I think he's going to get the win. I think he's going to get the job done. Getting into the main event in this one, was an unlikely main event, like I said. It was maybe supposed to be Alex Pereira, but they moved him up to 300 to make that one feel even bigger. He's been in Brazil all week building this one up. Even though he's not on the card, he said he wanted to get back on this card as he took no damage against Jamal Hill at UFC 300. But Pantoja's leading the bill, already has a title defense under his belt in his last fight. So he has 2 title wins at this point, and he beat Brandon Moreno, then defended against Brandon Royval in December. And that was a really good performance from Pantoja, really dominant performance, really just controlled that fight from start to finish. I never thought he was in danger, and I even gained more. I think Pantoja gained more credibility as a champion in that fight, and I just felt more comfortable watching him. He seemed more dominant. Against Moreno, it was up and down. It was really close, split decision win. But against Royval, he controlled that. He showed that he's a champion, and he has that champion spirit. And I don't think that's going to be any different come Saturday night when this one's all said and done in his hometown, in his home country of Brazil. I think he's going to beat Steve Erceg. Steve Erceg is underrated. He's only been in the UFC a short while now. 12-1 overall, only 3-0 in the UFC. Great knockout over Matt Schnell a couple months ago, just 2 months ago. Quick turnaround for him. I just don't think he's faced this level of competition yet. Going from Matt Schnell to Alex Pantoja, they're just worlds apart. Schnell's a good competitor, good veteran. Pantoja is on a different level right now. He's the king in this division for a reason. Beat Brandon Moreno, one of the best champions, one of the most competitive fighters we've seen in this division in a long time. So I'm going to go with Pantoja on this one. But thanks everybody for tuning in. UFC 301 in Brazil is taking place on Saturday, May 4th. This should be a pretty good card.